Transportation Committee. It is March 14th. We are here to talk about miscellaneous DMV bill, and we have Damian Leonard in the chair, and it's yours.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So we are looking at draft 8.2. Dated yesterday at 4:32 p.m. All right. Let me take you through where there's only a very few things that we are still looking at this point. So the first is the license extension early renewal language. I just wanted to flag. Well, actually, before we get there, you'll notice that the old section 5, the registration permits, the no charge for printing them off from the online is taken out. And so we've renumbered from there on. We've also switched over to the DCF's preferred language for the foster children. And then getting to section 15, which is this is on page 21. This is the early renewal language for the license, what we've been calling the license extensions, but it's really an early renewal so that you can get a full-year license now, and you don't have to wait. So that would be section 15. This language is identical to what you looked at on Wednesday. Section 16 is for the non-driver IDs. Also identical to what you looked at on Wednesday. It's the same early renewal. Section 17 is also identical to what you looked at on Wednesday. This is the providing information to individuals who are unable to or do not wish to comply with the real ID requirements about alternative IDs. And then section 18 is brand new. That's on page 23. This is the updated outreach section that you requested yesterday. So this would require by November 15th, a public education and outreach campaign that would inform Vermonters about the rights to obtain an operator's license, privilege card, or non-driver ID, the right to self-attest with respect to the gender marker, and reduced fees that are available to individuals who meet certain requirements.
Sure. And the reduced fees is not in reference to this, but in reference to the SSI.
That's right. Yeah, it's the new SSI, SSDI reduced fees.
Oh, well, maybe we should say like low income individuals or something, just to be
No,
clear.
I think when you do the SSI, it clearly holds a place in statute and gives it a clearer record.
I was just thinking about the outreach. Like when you say individuals who meet certain requirements,
So it's
that's pretty vague.
to meet SSI and SSDI, you have to be more than low income. And so that's why I just left it at certain requirements instead of listing them.
Okay, well, I would hope that the outreach would include just some sort of reference for low income people so that they would be alert and look for it.
The commissioner I hope is listening.
We're gonna,
I mean, we don't have to have
after
the
we
language.
get back around to
Okay.
all of this, you can ask the
Oh,
commissioner.
I'm sorry.
But
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get through
Got it.
Damian and Logan, and then I'm gonna go to the commissioner and ask him to talk and.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So SSI, there are 3 different options to qualify an additional to low income or that need to be combined with that. And then SSDI, there is a low income aspect, but there's also a disability aspect. And so the department will know what their reduced fees are because they're just SSI and SSDI and veterans. And so they'll be able to identify those different aspects here with the general language was the thought rather than spelling it out and potentially missing something.
Okay.
Which I wanted to avoid in case, since I'm new to this, in case there's a reduced fee, I don't know that the folks at DMV do.
Sounds good.
So that was the intent there. But I do take your point that these are all targeted to low income individuals. It's just, I would be reluctant to put that in because there are some low income individuals who won't qualify for reduced fee.
Thank you.
Okay. Um. Next changes, are there other changes in here? I think we closed out most of the language yesterday. Oh, there we go. The used motor vehicles tax and inspection study committee, which is on page 54. So all the way at the end, section 43. The big update here is that we got rid of the legislative members. So that it's the commissioner of motor vehicles or his designee, and then 3 other members appointed by the representative of the Vermont dealers, the insurance agents, and the community action partnership.
Okay.
Yep, and that takes out the potential appropriation there.
Mhm.
So, and then I've updated the compensation and reimbursement section there on page 56, just to reflect that we don't have legislative compensation. And that's it.
Thank you. We can swap chairs, and we could have proposed if you up there.
How do I remove a computer histories?
I already spilled yogurt on myself, so.
It's one of those days.
Start.
Just start.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning. For the record, Logan Mover from the Joint Fiscal Office. You should have a fiscal note in front of you. It's highlighted at the DR 2506 30th, the draft request. This is pretty much the exact
One.
should be the 2 highlighted sections, yeah,
Okay.
2 pages. It's pretty much the same as I showed you yesterday. There's some minor changes in the numbering or the section numbering. And then on the 3rd page, the study committee has been reduced down so that, impact has been reduced,
Mhm.
to only the public members, but the rest of this, I believe is all the same as the fiscal note I presented to you yesterday. On the 1st page there, sort of fiscal impact, this proposal, we're estimating to reduce transportation fund revenues by approximately $353,000 per year.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for making this. I think you added this thing on here, so I like that. That's helpful to be bold. I really appreciate that we were able to collectively get this number to where it is. That makes me feel a lot better about the bill in general. And my only question is, you were kind enough to send over email information about the sections we reviewed around ending license renewal. And when we had compared the 2 language options in the original that I had, you had noted that there was definitely risk of fiscal impact. We had Chris Rube who came and discussed that with us. And then he had, I think, alluded to not having that concern with the new language. And then over email, you were really clear that you agreed with that. So I'm wondering if I'm not seeing that in here, but I'm assuming because it doesn't have a fiscal impact.
That is correct. Yeah. So, the language as it exists in the bill now, I do not believe that it'll have a significant fiscal impact on this, just given the sort of number of people who will be taking advantage of this. Again, as I alluded to in my email, there might be a slight bump as some people do renew earlier than they might have, but I think overall and as for the transportation fund as a whole, it won't have a significant impact. And so, yes, it is not currently in the fiscal note.
Thank you.
Unless there are any further questions, Commissioner?
Good morning, Andrew Collier, Commissioner of DMV for the record.
And you've been with us through most of this. And you've heard the slight changes that have gone on from the last version. Do you have any comments?
No comments. I heard Senator Harrison's comment about the public outreach. That is going to be our intent, is to paint it with a broad brush. It just to let kind of all Vermonters know, not just to kind of single in any specific groups or individuals. It's just it's going to be a broad disbursement across Vermont, and information will be out there.
Thank you.
Otherwise, no concerns, and I certainly thank this committee for working with us through this first round of getting this through.
Perfect. Do I hear a motion?
I move the bill as final drafted.
8.2.
Second.
8.2.
Yeah.
8.2, it ended in 1.1. We did that.
8.2.
8.2.
There's a big file of them.
Yeah.
And I want to assure you, there are no legislators on any study committee.
Okay.
So
Well, if there is, I'll see it in the first meeting.
we very much, so, do you have, does the clerk have a sheet?
All right.
It does. Perfect.
Sorry, you filled it out.
If the clerk would call the,
Yes, Mr. Chair. Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Harrison, yes. Senator Pritchett,
Yes.
Senator Brennan,
Yes.
Senator Westman.
yes,
Okay, so that 500.
and
Who will be the reporter?
I will put me as the reporter. I will be in touch with some of you. I may try to break this up, but I need the weekend, and Damien and I will talk about that. But I may ask members of the committee to do this. Take a look at this. Another one, yeah, we have one left.
Oh, look at your sweatshirt too, with your very, very appropriately dressed.
Thanks. At what time are we expecting Michael?
9:30.
So we've got 40 minutes. But right now we can run through the numbers and hopefully it will be drafted correctly. This time. Do we have a copy of the draft?
Yeah, what's the latest draft?
I think you want to discuss your proposed amendment, Senator West.
Yes.
That will be a sheet, not the fiscal note sheet. It'll say estimate of fiscal impact associated with Senator Westman's amendment to S-46.
And you should have the amendment to it. And you should have
Yeah.
the amendment from Michael.
Okay.
And I think it's 2.1.1
Okay.
or proposal to 1.1. There you go. Right. If you could, and the attempt here is 50% of the final tax imposed by this chapter on the following vehicles. So it would reduce the tax that they owe by 50%. Not changing the underlying statute, but it would create a reduction. So if you run through that, and then we'll talk about why this is the way it is. But if you
Sure. So yeah, as the senator mentioned, my understanding is that the language, when Michael agreed to go through it, will provide for a reduction of sort of that final tax levied on one of these new vehicles weighing over 10,000 pounds. They'll reduce that by 50%. So this is a random numbers example. If you have a $2,000 tax, if you're one of these applicable vehicles, it would then be reduced to $1,000. Fairly simple. So as such, this section written this way is estimated to reduce the purchase and use tax revenue by approximately $500,000 annually, half from what we saw yesterday. And then again, purchase and use goes to both the transportation fund and the education fund in a 2/3, 1/3 split. So transportation fund revenues would be reduced by roughly $333,000, and the education fund revenues would be reduced by $167,000. And then I won't go through it all again, but the third paragraph there, as we discussed yesterday, there are a number of sort of limitations and sort of data constraints with calculating this, but this is sort of the estimate that we've come up with for this proposal.
So 50% reduction in the tax. The tax is limited at 2,486. So that doesn't necessarily. It is the same basically of limited, of taking that tax and setting the maximum. But there is an instance where you would never be over 50%.
So even if you hit the cap, it'd be taking the final number based on the normal calculation and just reducing it. So you would never still be at that cap. It would always just be, if you hit the cap prior to this exemption, you take the 2,486 and just divide
So
it
it's
by
kind of like setting a new cap, but just done on
a little lower, yes, and trying not to mess with the underlying purchase and use calculation that goes into, because then you get into some funkier math with that.
I think B is where 50% of the final tax imposed by this chapter.
Right.
So it doesn't change any of the underlying, it just says 50% of the final tax imposed by this chapter.
Which includes the cap, the maximum.
Yep.
Wasn't enough.
Yes. Yep. And I would just say to the committee that, the concern that, that is out there is we in this give up, 2/3 of what we're giving away in this is transportation, which is clearly our bailiwick. This bill is going to go to finance. Finance will be next week facing crossover. I suspect they're going to have quite a few bills from other committees that show up in finance. And the sales tax piece of this, which I know the advocates wanted and the sponsors wanted more than anything. But that is really a finance committee issue. And most importantly, for the individuals that want this bill and the sponsors at this point, we're up against it. We have to have something out of this committee this morning to keep this issue alive. And I think what we do is they make their case in finance, and I would encourage them to make their case in finance, that if finance wanted to add the sales tax back in, they should. I think that the bill will go to the other body and they can do that. I am pretty clear the first thing the chair of the finance committee would say to us, you have no skin in the game on the ed fund piece. So I feel uncomfortable sending over a bill to them that they would. I really think, and I'm happy to go over with whoever in this committee reports the bill. I'm happy to go over and stress to the finance committee that that the sales tax being in was their first one. But I think most importantly right now, this is the only bill that will be going through the process making crossover from the House or the Senate for the forestry industry. And I think it keeps the issue alive for them because we're the first step in a long process. And I think it most important that we do what we can within our lane, and we give them the opportunity to make the case going further. So, and I felt I needed to say that so everybody could hear that and understand what the strategy is here. So I think what we'll do is make sure we let Mike O'Grady at 9:30 present what's redrafted, which you have. And my hope would be after he, gets out of the chair, that we get a chance, I'll entertain a motion to move the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your openness with your strategy piece. And I think you're right, as this being the only bill moving forward to support the forestry industry at this time when basically if you Google forestry right now in Vermont, you're gonna get article after article of the economic hardships that this group is facing. And the transportation of those goods is fundamental to people's access to them. So that is really the impetus behind the bill, obviously. I am disappointed, obviously, that the sales tax piece is out, especially because the main motivator for me from a climate standpoint was that the repair parts not being taxed meant that would be incentivizing the purchase of parts that help move a vehicle towards reducing its emissions and improving its fuel. It's the mileage per gallon, all of that stuff that can be costly. But if you have an incentive as a business owner where you're not getting taxed on it, you might make an informed financial decision to improve the stock of your vehicle that ultimately helps lower its carbon emissions. So that was a main reason for that. And I had actually worked with Michael McGrady on an alternative proposal, which just got rid of section 1 altogether and kept the repair sales tax. It sounds like that, and if we want to have both of those proposals presented, Michael did draft it. I mean, it's pretty simple. It just cuts the first section out. So it didn't take him too long. But if you wanted to compare those, I'm open to that. It sounds like you don't want to do that. So I'm happy to just accept this. But I do think strategically, I think I've never heard of a finance committee adding back something that reduces a sales tax that a policy committee didn't put in a bill. Like I've never seen that happen, but maybe I'm just new. So I think if we do want to make a real case that that's a valuable thing, we would keep it in the bill. Like it makes no logical sense to me that they would actually add it back in without it being recommended by a policy committee. So I think if we're going to not have it in the bill, we just need to let the advocates know, like it's not going to happen. Like I don't want to tease out the idea that it's going to get somehow advocated for in finance and put back in when I think that's just not. I mean, maybe I'm misreading the situation, but if you feel so strongly that they would just take it out if we had it in the bill, I don't see what would be making it even remotely likely that they would add it back in if we didn't even include it in the bill. So, but I am accepting of this and I really appreciate you taking the time and working on an alternative strategy. And from my understanding, I believe that the association is comfortable with this. Obviously not the ideal with the way the bill was written, but they're comfortable and that makes me feel comfortable with it. So I'm happy to just move forward with this proposal personally and vote for it.
I would just say to you that in this situation, the policy committee around ed fund financing is the finance committee. There is, we aren't that's the crux of this, that as the transportation committee, we aren't the policy committee that would make recommendations. I have seen a finance committee create exemptions.
Okay.
I was here when they swapped out and they took the whole sales tax. That's not, the sales tax used to go to the general fund and they did the swap out to do that. The difficulty in this place is the policy committee that handles education finance is the finance committee. And I am very aware that they feel like that's their purview, and it is. And so from that vantage point, I would encourage, I would say to you, I think there's members on the finance committee that do have people in the forestry community in their districts. And we should advocate with them to at least raise the issue with them, because I think clearly in the House, they will have a vehicle that will have met crossover and a vehicle that they could add it back in.
Okay, that's,
And I think at this point, if there's no vehicle,
yeah, I
There's-
agree.
there's no way to continue this discussion.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Logan.
course.
And at 9:30, we'll be back here with Michael.